right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. So my name is Sam Huber. I'm the founder of Admix. We are a monetization solution, mostly aimed at virtual reality, augmented reality, as well as games and esports. And today, what I want to talk about is advertising, where the industry is headed, and also how XR is going to play an increasingly large part of that industry, and what it means for the creators as well. So, advertising is quite a funny industry. I was at a big advertising conference called the Expo a month ago, and it's 40,000 people, 3,000 companies exhibiting. Everyone that has a name in the space actually attends it. And I was talking to one of our partners, and he was saying, Sam, everything that we're doing here, all these people here, the only thing that they're really trying to do is to push more ads in front of people who do not want to see them. And initially it made me laugh, and then I realized that this was actually quite a sad statement that would really represent well the status of the industry. The advertising industry over the last 10 years has not been doing super well. Advertising is constantly ranked by people as one of the things that they are the most annoyed by. 9 out of 10 people, according to a survey that was run last year, think this is actually getting worse every year. There's more and more intrusive ads. And 8 out of 10 feel like they are being tracked across devices. So not only it's annoying and intrusive, but it also compromises their privacy. So that's kind of how everyone feels today in the face of advertising. And it's not getting any better. But it used to be different. In the 60s and 70s, when the first ads were actually pushed on television, families were actually looking forward to watch commercials together. Because back in the day, advertising was all about the big ideas, the big concepts, trying to create brand love and deliver happiness to the customers, making them feel like what it would be if they actually owned the product. Whereas right now, advertising looks more like this. It's all about click-through rate and avoiding traffic fraud and maximizing viewability, whatever that means. So we definitely lost the art part of advertising. And as a result of the internet, you can see here that the number of ads that an average American sees per day has gone up by a factor of 10. And that really only happened in the past 15, 20 years. As a result of that, an entire industry was actually born. Now, if you pause for a second and think, what other industries are so annoying, create such a terrible experience that is an entire industry that is created to fight them? I can't think of too many of them. So the ad blocker industry is soaring, and is actually getting worse and worse for each generation. You can see here, 45 to 54 years old, less than 15% of them use ad blockers daily, and over 60% of the new generation use those ad blockers as well. So if you're a brand today, if you're an agency, you start feeling that there is a bit of a trend playing out here, and it's not going in the right direction for them. In addition from ad blockers, one of the main problems that brands have to reach the new generations is that they hang out in different environments. Only 9% of Generation Z name Facebook as their favorite social network. Instead, they hang out on Instagram, Snapchat, and as well as more and more this 3D content, AR, VR, esports type of application that have really caught on over the past few years. Fortnite is a perfect example of this. There's I don't know how many hundreds of millions of players. I call it the MSN Messenger of the new generation. They are logging in, putting on their avatars, and use it as a communication tool, not only as a game. And the amazing thing is that there are literally no brands present in that environment. So there's all this amazing environment with millions and millions of players, and brands have no real technology to be part of that conversation and engage with those users. So it's fair to say that the advertising industry is in crisis. They have two main problems. The main one is that they cannot reach their core audience, this audience of millennials, Generation Z that already today hold a big part of the purchasing power, and of course in the next few generations it's going to be more and more. They are not able to reach them properly because of what we've seen before, the ad blockers, but also the fact that they just hang out in different environments that are not very well suited to advertising just yet. And the second problem is that even when they reach them, they are not able to engage properly with them. Because this new generation actually is becoming blind to traditional advertising. They were, most of them, born with internet ads. They do not stop to look at banners. If you look at the performance per generation, it's actually really clear to see that the performance is going backwards. And it's harder and harder for brands. They have to spend more and more money to get the same level of engagement. So brands, again, are in crisis. The trend is going down. They have to spend more money to reach the same number of people, and they just don't have the right tools to be able to engage that audience. Funny enough, they actually know what they should be doing. Millennials, Generation Z, do not react well to traditional ads, banners, pre-roll videos. They do not like to be interrupted, but they do like to be taken on a journey. They do like to be told what it would feel to be associated with that brand. And this type of marketing is what we call experiential marketing. And I'm sure you've seen cars like this across campuses or in the city, or brand activation campaigns. This is something that McDonald's did at Coachella, for example. And this works really, really well. Millennials are really able to relate super well with this. It's a non-intrusive way. It creates a direct dialogue between the brands and the actual end consumer. The problem with this is that it's very hard to scale, especially online. We can see that most of these great experiences happen offline. It's great to put on a show like this, but it's very hard to create the same kind of experience on such a small screen. And so this experiential marketing has really been limited by the devices so far. Now, if only we had a device that would allow users to be immersed in a different environment so that they could experience this firsthand. Or we had a device where we could augment the user experience so that they could interact with the digital product before they buy it. I think you see where I'm going with this. It's getting increasingly clear that XR is really going to save advertising. I can't say this enough. It's not in the theoretical sense. It's actually, they are really going to save the industry from collapsing. You know, when I'm talking about the advertising industry here and the fact that it's going to save advertising, I'm not talking about the IKEA app and this other creative project that we have seen. We know that XR for marketing already works on a one-off project, but I'm talking about a much more profound change in the world where brands are going to realize that this is going to be the only channel where they can find the right audience and engage them in the right way. And this year it has really picked up, the interest from brands and from agency, and we see that firsthand at Admix. And funnily, the reason why it has picked up is not really because the audience has increased by a factor of 10 or 15. It's more the signal that brands listen to realize, okay, this is going to be a real channel, not just an experiment. So brands would look at how many headsets have been sold. And this is last year before the Quest actually went to market. And this is a nice uptick on the last quarter. One thing that brands love is the idea that next year there will be over 1 billion AR devices in circulation through the smartphone. The billion number is a big thing for them. It means that there's an actual real market, a real channel where they can reach a large, large amount of people. So all of these trends, all of these numbers are actually super important. This perception that brands have that we're getting out of this throw of disillusionment, but really into reaching a proper market that reaches millions and millions of users. And the great thing about advertising is that it's a $500 billion industry worldwide. Yes, of course, through times, brands, advertisers have struggled, but they've also always managed to find ways to reach their audience eventually. And they will do it again this time, and this time they will use XR. This is why the advertising industry needs XR. They need it to reach a core audience of young generation in the new environments. And here I'm talking about XR at a large sense, which includes also e-sport, for example. And the second step is to reach them in a way that engages them through what we call experiential marketing. It's the ability to have these micro experiences that for the first time will be able to be distributed at scale. Again, we've seen firsthand this year at Admix that brands are actually starting to pay attention to it. At the back end of last year, it took us about 4 months to close our first programmatic campaign. And then the next 6 months after that, we announced over 200 brands actually jumping on the bandwagon, because now they have a technology that is easy for them to actually reach that audience. And so I've talked about what it means for brands, and also what it will mean for the consumer. They can get engaged with the brand in a non-intrusive way without being annoyed. But let's see what it means really in a real XR environment and what it means for the creators as well. So the idea of that we're proposing is that XR is really a representation of the real world, or it could be, or a better way. And so the idea is to try to integrate brands within the environment in a way that the creator really controls, and that brands really get a lot of viewability out of it and a lot of interactions, but also in a way that doesn't intrude or interrupt with the users. And this is really the key. When people say they hate advertising, what they really mean is that they hate interruption. They hate to try to watch a video and have to watch 1 or 2 pre-roll videos before that. Or they hate to play a game and something pops up in the middle. When you just walk in the street and you see a billboard on your right, or maybe in a mall, it might not be something you love, but it's something that you can live with. You can keep walking, you can look away. It doesn't interrupt you. It's not intrusive. And this is the kind of experience that I think we need to bring to XR, because in XR, intrusion won't be tolerated. So this is our first step. Our first step is to go to brands and say, there is this new environment. They're full of millennials, they're full of Generation Z, people who are spending over an hour a day interacting in these environments that you can't reach elsewhere. Why don't we use some of your existing creatives, your existing ads, and place them in these environments in a nice way, in a way that doesn't stick out or doesn't scream like it's really advertising, in a way that makes sense. And the response from that has been amazing. In less than a year, we are reaching close to now 1 billion ad impressions per month, which is a huge number for those kind of environments, and will open tremendous possibilities for brands to be able to be part of this new conversation. But of course, this is not the end game. The end game is to be able to generate experiential marketing, and experiential marketing is not a banner or a video. We're talking about 3D products natively integrated with the experience, so that it really feels like it's part of the game or part of the story. So instead of having a banner for an advertiser like this is a simple example that gives you an idea of how we see that working. And this could work in any type of environment. But this is only the second step. And the reason for that is because it requires different assets from the advertiser. They need to create this can, they need to program it. It's not something they already have. So the first step is to make them familiar with the environment, and then we will talk about actually them investing into new, more engaging creatives. So a few weeks ago, or a month ago now, I wrote an article for the Next Web, which got quite a bit of attention, which was titled "Why Paid VR Content is Already Dead." And this transitions nicely into the second part of the talk, which is we've talked a lot about why advertisers need to be in XR to reach this new audience in a new way. But we need to make sure that this makes sense for the creators as well. Advertising is always really a marketplace between creators and the brands. And so the point of this article here was that over the next 5 years to 10 years, content creators, game developers will have to rely on new business models to succeed in VR and in AR. We've actually done some analysis, and today there's only about 18% of applications in the VR store, such as Steam and Oculus, which are free of charge. The rest range from, a lot of them are between $1 and $5, and it goes up to $100. So the vast majority of apps today are not free. Now, this is fine for now, because we are still very early in the market. And most of these users are early adopters. They are willing to pay for content, just like they were willing to pay for prototype, unproven hardware. And generally, they have higher purchasing power than the average person. But everyone here in this room hopes and knows that VR, AR is going to be massive scale media. It's really going to be the next computing platform. And so to reach that level, we need to target and reach people that are not only early adopters, but really everyone. Everyone will be able to use VR and AR to do whatever it is that they want to do. It's just a new way to present information. What it means is that most of the content will have to be cheaper, if not free, because as we know from the mobile industry, the price of media has been commoditized by mobile. And not everyone is willing to pay $19.99, $39.99 for a piece of content. There will always be a place for premium, of course. Gaming will be a great example for that. But if we want VR, AR to become more than gaming and really to become a global scale computing platform, new business model will be needed. And there could be various of them coexisting. Could be subscription, there will be in-app purchase, and of course there will be advertising. Advertising still today remains the best way to monetize the long tail of the users who do not want to engage with subscription or with in-app purchase. And this is where I think the market's going. Today it's about 18%. I think that this is going to double in the next 2 years, the percentage of free apps, and probably reach over 80% in the next decade. This is not something I'm just making up. It actually happens on the mobile market as well. The graph here is inverted, but you can see that the number of paid app was over 75% in the first year of the App Store, which is kind of where I would rank VR to be today. And then it went all the way down to about 15% in 2014, and it's actually closer to under 10% now. Again, same mechanics, more and more people entered this market. They were not willing to pay up front, so the developers had to adapt, find new business models, and they found that when you put your app for free, you get about 50% more downloads. You can try to monetize these users later on the back end. So this is going to happen again in VR and AR, and so it's really important to see that for the creators, they have options to actually transition to free and monetize in different ways. And so this is really what Admix has been all about. We are building the infrastructure necessary for these creators to be able to change business models, to be able to say, I'm not going to charge $19.99, I'm going to charge less or nothing, and I'm going to try to make money in a different way. Now, of course, it depends on the audience. You need an audience to monetize with advertising. This is not a trend that is going to play in the next few months. It's a global trend that is going to play in the next decade. But what's really exciting is to see that the brands are already on board, and not just because it's cool, not just because it's a new channel, but as I've presented earlier, because they genuinely are struggling. The industry is in a proper crisis, and I believe that this will be the solution for XR to actually save advertising, and for the first time create a model where advertising works with the end user, for the publishers, and also for the advertisers. If you want to learn more, I'd love to you guys to come to booth 402 in the next hall. We showcase a great deal of examples of our own technology, but also our developers that use Admix, so you can see real use cases and talk more with the team. Thank you very much.